The Galactic Federation stood as the undisputed authority in the known galaxy, a powerful coalition of advanced alien species united by their shared belief in their own superiority. For centuries, they had maintained order, exerting control over countless worlds with their unmatched technology and overwhelming military might. Their ships, sleek and formidable, cut through the vastness of space like silent predators. To them, humanity was a footnote, a primitive, emerging race barely worthy of notice. Humans were seen as naive and weak, their technology little more than crude imitations of the true advances made by the Federation's leading scientists. At the forefront of this disdainful view stood Admiral Vortak, a veteran commander renowned for his strategic acumen and his unwavering belief in the Federation's supremacy. Vortak had commanded fleets in countless skirmishes, always emerging victorious. To him, human ships were nothing but floating scrap metal, relics of a lesser civilization that posed no real threat. He considered humans impulsive and reckless, a species lacking the discipline and innovation required to be taken seriously in interstellar affairs. Today, Vortak was overseeing a routine patrol in a contested sector near human territory. The region had seen some minor skirmishes in the past, mostly inconsequential engagements that the Federation barely acknowledged. They had always regarded this area as a low priority, believing that no real resistance could emerge from such an unsophisticated corner of space. Vortak, bored by the lack of action, was eager for any opportunity to assert his dominance and remind the humans of their place. Midway through the patrol, Vortak received a report from his tactical officers. An unidentified fleet had been detected on the edge of their sensor range. He reviewed the data with a mixture of annoyance and amusement. The ships were small, outdated by his standards, and moved with a lack of coordination that suggested either inexperience or incompetence. "It appears we have some interlopers," he muttered, dismissing them as a minor nuisance. "Humans, no doubt," he scoffed, a wry smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He ordered his fleet to investigate, preparing for what he believed would be a swift and decisive engagement. His ships moved into position with precise coordination, their weapons systems humming with energy, ready to fire at his command. Vortak relished these moments of superiority, knowing that whatever force awaited them would be no match for the Federation's elite. As they drew closer, the Federation fleet detected the human task force. Vortak observed the incoming sensor data with a faint look of disdain. The human ships appeared as expected, unimpressive, battered, and seemingly ill-equipped for any serious combat. To Vortak, they were a joke, an odd assortment of vessels barely worth his time. He chuckled softly and ordered an immediate attack, confident that his superior firepower and maneuverability would make quick work of them. "Engage at will," he commanded, his tone filled with condescension. The Federation ships surged forward, weapons primed. They fired the first volley, a barrage of bright energy bolts meant to overwhelm the human vessels instantly. Vortak leaned back in his command chair, expecting to see the human ships scatter or disintegrate under the onslaught. But something unexpected happened. Instead of panicking or breaking formation, the human ships remained still, almost as if waiting. Vortak frowned, interpreting this as a sign of fear or incompetence. "Pathetic," he muttered under his breath. However, just as the Federation salvo was about to connect, the human ships sprang to life, moving in ways that defied every expectation. They darted to the sides with a speed that seemed impossible for their size, evading the incoming fire with an agility that left Vortak's tactical officers momentarily stunned. The human ships seemed to dance through space, executing sharp turns and abrupt changes in direction that should have torn them apart. The movements were fluid and precise, like nothing Vortak had ever seen before. "What is this?" Vortak demanded, his voice rising with a mix of confusion and irritation. His officers scrambled to adjust targeting systems, but the human ships continued to dodge effortlessly. They accelerated and decelerated at will, seeming to warp short distances without using any known jump technology. It was as if they were rewriting the laws of physics before their eyes. The initial volley had missed entirely, and now the human ships were closing in, taking up positions that put them at a tactical advantage. The Federation fleet found itself disoriented, caught off guard by the unexpected maneuvers. Vortak's amusement vanished, replaced by a cold, creeping realization that something was very wrong. He had never seen ships move like this, and his mind raced to understand what was happening. "Recalculate targeting trajectories," he barked, struggling to maintain his composure. His crew worked furiously, trying to compensate for the erratic movements of the human ships, but it was clear that their systems were not designed for this kind of unpredictability. Vortak's eyes narrowed as he watched the human ships continue their impossible maneuvers, evading every attempt to lock on. His confidence began to waver, a rare feeling for a commander of his stature. "What kind of technology are they using?" he muttered, more to himself than to his crew. The moment the battle began in earnest, the human ships moved in ways that defied all logic and understanding. They accelerated at blinding speeds, shifting from stationary to full velocity in an instant, leaving streaks of light in their wake. Their movements were abrupt, changing directions so sharply that it seemed as though they were immune to inertia and gravity. Massive vessels turned on their axes in an instant, then shot upwards at angles that should have caused their hulls to collapse under the strain. Admiral Vortak stared in disbelief as the human ships executed maneuvers that no ship of their size or design should have been capable of. "How are they doing that?" he muttered, his voice thick with shock. Around him, his crew watched the display with growing alarm. Their targeting systems, which had always been precise and infallible, were failing to lock onto the erratic patterns of the human ships. Every time they thought they had a target, it vanished, reappearing somewhere else entirely. "This is impossible," one of his officers whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "They're moving faster than our sensors can track." Vortak quickly realized that his standard tactics were useless. "Adjust formations," he barked, trying to keep his voice steady. He ordered his fleet to spread out, attempting to encircle the human task force and box them in. His mind raced, trying to decipher the technology at play. "They must be using some sort of advanced propulsion system, something we've never seen before," he reasoned, hoping that by limiting their space, they could negate whatever advantage the humans seemed to possess. But the human ships seemed to anticipate every move. As the Federation ships moved to close the net, the humans warped short distances, vanishing from one spot and appearing in another. There was no visible sign of jump engines or hyperspace entry. They simply blinked out of existence and reappeared elsewhere. The Federation fleet found themselves firing at empty space, chasing phantoms that were always a step ahead. Panic began to ripple through the Federation ranks. Vortak could hear it in the frantic reports from his officers, the rising tension in their voices. "They're everywhere!" someone shouted over the comms. "We can't pin them down!" The human ships were moving faster than the Federation's top speed, hitting harder with every attack, and then vanishing before the aliens could mount any form of defense. It was as if the humans were toying with them, exploiting every gap, every weakness in their formations. Vortak tried to maintain order, issuing commands with a calm that belied the fear creeping into his own heart. But his directives were constantly interrupted by reports of unexplained malfunctions. Systems that had never failed before were now glitching inexplicably. Targeting arrays went offline, navigation charts scrambled, and communications were filled with static. It was as if the human ships were sending out waves of interference, disrupting the Federation fleet at every level. "Impossible," Vortak muttered under his breath, his mind racing to find an explanation. "How are they doing this?" The human ships defied every known countermeasure. They moved with an agility that seemed almost supernatural, darting between the Federation vessels with ease, their weapons striking with pinpoint accuracy. The alien Admiral watched helplessly as his once disciplined fleet descended into case. The more the Federation ships tried to adapt, the more futile their efforts seemed. Vortak's confidence, so unshakable at the start of the engagement, was beginning to crumble. He could see the fear spreading among his crew, hear it in their voices, feel it in the hesitation that slowed their movements. The human ships were outmaneuvering them at every turn, and there was no telling what they would do next. Realizing that his fleet was on the brink of collapse, Vortak made a decision. "Order a temporary retreat," he commanded, his voice tight with frustration and fear. "We need to regroup and analyze what we're dealing with." He could sense the doubt in his officers' expressions, but they obeyed, pulling back from the engagement zone. As they retreated, Vorhak stared at the screen, watching the human ships hold their position, almost as if they were daring the Federation to return. For the first time in his long career, Vorhak felt a deep, unsettling fear. He had thought he understood warfare, had believed in the absolute superiority of the Federation's technology. But now, he was faced with an enemy that defied every expectation, an enemy that seemed to know his fleet's every move before he even made it. He had never felt so helpless, so completely out of his depth. As the Federation ships moved to a safe distance, Vorhak's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of this impossible puzzle. What kind of technology could allow ships to move like that? How could they defy the laws of physics? And most importantly, how could the Federation counter such a threat? Back on the flagship, Admiral Vorhak stood with his officers, staring at the battle data flashing across the screens. The room was tense, filled with a palpable sense of disbelief and confusion. Every sensor reading, every tactical report seemed to contradict their understanding of what was possible. The human ships had moved in ways that defied explanation, using capabilities that should not exist. The officers around Vorhak whispered among themselves, theories and speculations filling the air. "We're missing something," Vorhak muttered, his voice breaking through the tense silence. He demanded explanations, desperate for anything that could make sense of what they had just witnessed. Some officers suggested that the humans were using an advanced propulsion system, one that bent space around their ships or manipulated gravity itself. Others speculated about cloaking devices that distorted light or created holographic decoys, but none of the theories seemed to explain everything they had seen. A junior officer tentatively proposed retreating and reporting these findings to the Federation High Command, but Vorhak's expression darkened at the suggestion. Admitting defeat was unthinkable. His pride and reputation were on the line, and he refused to be the one who ran from a fight with humans. "No," he barked, his voice filled with determination. "We will find a way to counter them. We just need a new strategy." Vorhak turned to his tactical officers, ordering the fleet to reorganize. They would change their formations, spreading out to create a net designed to trap the human ships and neutralize their maddening maneuverability. He ordered the deployment of electromagnetic pulse generators, devices designed to disrupt any cloaking or warp technology the humans might be using. If the humans were hiding behind tricks, Vorhak intended to expose them. His plan was to overwhelm the human ships with sheer numbers and firepower, forcing them into a direct confrontation where the Federation's superior weaponry could be decisive. He reasoned that the humans could not possibly have an answer for everything. If they could limit the humans' ability to maneuver, they could finally bring their guns to bear and end this battle on their terms. The Federation fleet moved back into position, ready to execute Vorhak's strategy. Ships spread out into a wide arc, forming a crescent that would close in around the human task force. The electromagnetic pulses were primed, their capacitors humming with power. Vorhak watched the tactical display, his eyes narrowing as he waited for the humans to react. He felt a surge of confidence, certain that this time they had outsmarted the enemy. But the human ships adapted once more. As soon as the Federation fleet moved in, the humans executed even more bewildering maneuvers. They shifted positions rapidly, seeming to anticipate every move before it happened. They darted between the gaps in the formation, warping short distances that defied the Federation's calculations. Vorhak's confidence began to falter as he watched the electromagnetic pulses fire, only to see the human ships unaffected, phasing through the energy fields as if they were not there. Panic began to spread among the Federation ranks. "They're still moving!" a voice shouted over the comms. "The pulses aren't stopping them!" Vorhak's eyes widened in horror as he realized the truth. The human ships were not just evading their attacks, they were predicting them. Every time he adjusted his strategy, the humans seemed to know it in advance. It was as if they were reading his mind, playing a step ahead in a game he thought he controlled. Vorhak felt a chill run down his spine. How is this possible? he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. His officers looked at him, fear evident in their eyes. The human ships moved with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, darting through the Federation lines with an ease that was almost mocking. They phased through energy barriers as if they were mere illusions, bypassed shields, and struck at critical points with unerring accuracy. As the battle raged on, the Federation fleet began to fall apart. Communication broke down under the strain of unexplained interference. Orders were lost in the chaos, ships collided or veered off course, and discipline crumbled under the relentless assault. One by one, Federation ships were destroyed, their debris scattering across the void. The once proud fleet, built on centuries of superiority, was in complete disarray. Vorthak's heart pounded in his chest as he watched his fleet crumble. He had never seen anything like this, an enemy that was so completely beyond understanding. The humans were not just outmaneuvering them, they were dismantling them, piece by piece, with a precision and ease that was terrifying. Vorthak knew that they were facing something unprecedented, something that defied everything they thought they knew about space combat. Finally, the weight of the situation crashed down on him. He realized that they were utterly outmatched. For the first time, he understood that the Federation's technology, their strategies, their very understanding of warfare, were obsolete against this new enemy. "Order a full retreat," he commanded, his voice hoarse with a mix of frustration and fear. "Get us out of here before we're wiped out." As the remaining Federation ships turned to flee, Vorthak stared at the tactical screen, his mind racing with confusion. He had thought this was just another skirmish, another show of force against an inferior opponent. But now, he knew that what he had witnessed was something far more significant. The humans were no longer an emerging race to be dismissed. They were a threat that could challenge the very foundations of the Federation's power. The Federation fleet had retreated to a safe distance, their once proud formation now a scattered array of ships nursing damage and confusion. On the flagship, Admiral Vorthak paced back and forth, his mind racing with questions and doubts. He had called an emergency council with his top officers, desperate for any kind of explanation that could make sense of what they had just witnessed. The room was tense, filled with murmurs and hushed conversations, but no one had any answers. Vorthak's patience wore thin. "I need theories," he snapped, his voice cutting through the tension. "Anything that can help us understand how the humans are doing this." His officers hesitated, each one aware that their explanations would likely fall short of what their Admiral demanded. The battle data they had collected was full of anomalies, readings that defied their understanding of physics and technology. Finally, a Federation scientist stepped forward, a pale-faced figure clutching a datapad tightly. "Admiral, we've been analyzing the sensor data," the scientist began, voice shaky but determined. "We believe the human ships are using a combination of quantum manipulation and gravity field technology. They're altering the fabric of space-time around their vessels, creating localized distortions that allow them to move in ways that should be impossible." The room fell silent. The words hung in the air, almost too absurd to process. Quantum manipulation? Gravity fields? The implications were staggering. Vorthak felt a chill run down his spine. "Explain," he demanded, narrowing his eyes. The scientist continued, more confident now. "It appears they can compress and expand space-time, effectively changing their position without the need for conventional propulsion. This would allow them to perform those sharp turns, rapid accelerations, and short-distance warps that we witnessed. Our sensors couldn't track them properly because they weren't moving in normal space. They were manipulating it." The officers around the room exchanged nervous glances. This was technology far beyond anything the Federation had developed or even conceived. Vorthak could see the realization dawning on their faces, the growing fear as they understood the full significance of this discovery. If the humans had mastered this level of technology, they could move in ways that broke the very laws of physics the Federation relied upon for their strategies and defenses. Panic began to spread through the ranks. One officer whispered, "If they can control space-time, they can bypass our defenses entirely. They could strike anywhere, at any time, and we'd never see it coming." Vortak felt a knot tightening in his chest. This wasn't just a new weapon or a clever tactic. This was a fundamental shift in the balance of power. Humanity, once dismissed as a minor threat, had developed capabilities that made them nearly unstoppable. The Federation had always assumed their technological edge would keep them ahead of the humans, but now it was clear that humanity had not only caught up, they might have surpassed them. We underestimated them, Vortak muttered, almost to himself. His mind raced with the implications. For so long, the Federation had treated humanity as a lesser race, not worthy of serious concern. Now they were facing a species that could bend the very fabric of reality to their will. Every assumption, every strategy they had relied upon, was now in doubt. He looked around the room, seeing the fear in his officer's eyes. "We cannot afford to ignore this," he said, his voice growing more urgent. "This isn't just about a single battle. This is a shift in the balance of power. We must reassess everything we know about humanity, their capabilities, and their intentions." Vortak knew that he had to send an urgent warning to the Federation High Command. They needed to understand that this was more than just a lost skirmish. This was a fundamental challenge to their supremacy. If the humans had truly mastered this technology, then the Federation was facing a threat like never before. He turned to his communications officer. "Prepare a transmission," he ordered, his tone grim. "I need to speak with High Command immediately." The officer nodded and quickly set to work. Vortak's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and fears. He had fought countless battles, faced numerous enemies, but he had never encountered anything like this. The humans were now a force that could not be ignored or underestimated. The transmission was ready, and Vortak took a deep breath. He knew that his words would carry weight, that they would shape the Federation's response to this new threat. "To the High Command," he began, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "I am reporting a significant development. The human fleet has demonstrated technological capabilities that we have never seen before. They are using quantum manipulation and gravity field technology to alter space-time itself. Our fleet was unable to counter their maneuvers, and we have suffered substantial losses." He paused, letting the gravity of his message sink in. "This is more than a tactical defeat. It represents a new level of technological advancement that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. I recommend immediate reassessment of our strategic approach to humanity. They are not the inferior race we believed them to be. They are a threat that must be taken seriously." As he finished the transmission, Vortak felt a mixture of fear and determination. He had always prided himself on his ability to predict and counter any threat, but now he faced an enemy that defied all his expectations. The Federation would need to adapt, to rethink their place in the galaxy, or risk being overtaken by a species they had once dismissed as insignificant. The report from Admiral Vortak arrived at the Federation High Command with the weight of a disaster that few had foreseen. The Council, comprised of the most powerful and influential leaders of the Galactic Federation, convened in an emergency session to discuss the implications. Vortak's message was played in full, his voice echoing through the Grand Chamber as he recounted the events: the human ships moving in impossible ways, the quantum manipulation, the crushing defeat. The room filled with a tense silence once the transmission ended, and the expressions on the faces of the council members ranged from disbelief to outright fear. One counselor, a veteran of countless conflicts, slammed a fist on the table. "This is unacceptable. We should retaliate immediately and remind these humans of their place." His voice was filled with anger and indignation, the pride of the Federation bruised by the thought of a defeat at the hands of a species they had considered inferior. Another council member, however, raised a hand in caution. "We cannot afford to be reckless," she countered, her tone measured but firm. "If what Admiral Vortak says is true, then humanity possesses technology beyond our understanding. An immediate retaliation could provoke an even greater response, one we may not be able to counter." A heated debate erupted among the council members. Some argued for overwhelming force, a show of strength to reassert their dominance, and crush any notion that humanity could challenge them. Others called for caution, warning that they could not afford to underestimate this new threat. The room buzzed with tension, voices raised, each argument more desperate than the last. Finally, the High Command reached a decision. They would treat humanity as a significant threat, something they had never done before. They would no longer dismiss them as an emerging race but recognize them as a formidable power in the galaxy. The Federation would need to adapt, to find new ways to deal with this unforeseen challenge. The first steps would involve gathering more intelligence. They would deploy spies and scouts to study human technology, culture, and psychology in far greater detail, searching for any potential weaknesses. They would invest heavily in technological research, hoping to replicate or counter the advancements that humanity had demonstrated. Additionally, they would attempt to broker alliances with other species, forming a coalition to balance the rapid rise of human power. "Knowledge is our first weapon," one of the counselors declared. "We must understand our enemy if we are to defeat them." Vorthak listened as the new strategies were outlined, his expression unreadable. He understood that this was only the beginning. The Federation had been forced to face the reality that they were no longer the only major power in the galaxy. Humanity had proven themselves to be a force that could no longer be ignored or underestimated. As the Council debated their plans, a new transmission came through. It was a broad-spectrum message, transmitted on all known frequencies, originating from Earth. The humans had been watching, and they were prepared to make their own statement to the galaxy. The message was simple, direct, and laced with quiet confidence. "We were underestimated. We suggest you don't make that mistake again." The words hung in the air, resonating with every member of the Federation High Command. It was a clear warning, a declaration that humanity was ready to defend their place among the stars and would not back down. The message sent ripples through the Council, stirring both anger and apprehension. Vorthak felt a chill as he listened to the human message. They were not gloating, they were stating a fact. The Federation had underestimated them, and now they faced the consequences. He realized that this was not the end of a conflict but the beginning of something far more profound. A shift in power, a new balance in the galaxy. The story was not over, it was just starting to unfold. Humanity had made their position clear, and now the Federation had to decide how they would respond. Vorthak knew that this encounter would change everything. The old assumptions were gone, replaced by a new reality where humanity was not just another species to be subjugated but a dominant force to be reckoned with. As the meeting drew to a close, Vorthak looked around the chamber, seeing the uncertainty in the eyes of his fellow commanders. They were grappling with a new truth, one that would require them to adapt or face the possibility of their own decline. The Federation would have to prepare for a future where humanity was a key player, one that could challenge their authority and reshape the galaxy. Plans were being drawn, alliances considered, strategies debated. The Federation would not be caught off guard again. But Vorthak knew that whatever they did next, it would have to be different from anything they had done before. Humanity had shown that they could change the rules of the game, and now the Federation had to play by those new rules or risk losing everything.